This condition Conduit build is extremely strong right now. Not only in terms of DPS numbers, but also very fun to play, very easy to get into the rotation because it's so fluid, and I just like it a lot. So if you're a Revenant fan, this might be the best Conduit build that you will get in a long while. If you're intrigued by this, be sure to watch the whole video to not miss out a thing about this condition Conduit build for group play in Guild Wars 2 PvE. I'm Simmer, and as always, special shout out to all my dear supporters that help me keep the lights on. And now without much further ado, let's jump straight in. Before I start with the gear, I want to mention that I did not come up with this build. All the math and the rotation, credits for that to Snowcrows and Umbra and Jewel9. If you want to see a written guide, be sure to check out their website in the description down below. I just want to promote this build and explain every single detail there is to it, and of course, showcase it. With that much said, let's start with the gear. The gear is really straightforward. You want to go for full Viper's gear with 2 exceptions. We will get to that in a second. If you can afford infusions, you would go with condition damage infusions. Viper gives you a very nice amount of condition damage, expertise, and also some power, of course, as well, and some precision, so you can actually get some nice damage on top of that with power scaling. For the rune, the best in slot choice is always Superior Rune of the Trapper. If you cannot get this, I would recommend getting, for example, Superior Rune of the Nightmare, or Superior Rune of the Undead, or Great, or something like that. Just be careful, Undead gives you some toughness, so you might become the tank at some point. Just keep that in mind. But with Rasa, you might have that anyway. For weapons, you always want to go with Spear, Mace, Axe. If you don't have access to Spear yet, this can be replaced with maybe a short bow, maybe. But the best in slot weapon is for sure the Spear. For sigils here, you want to go with Superior Sigil of Torment and Earth on the Spear. And on the Mace, you want to go Doom. And on the Axe, you want to have Geomancy. This is really important that you have 4 different sigils here, because they will proc on weapon swapping and legend swapping, so keep that in mind. And for stats, of course, full Viper again. The exceptions to your full Viper setup would be in your trinkets. Your trinkets would also be full Viper. However, 2 trinkets, the 1 accessory and 1 ring, would be Sinister. So keep that in mind. Sinister would give you no expertise, but a little bit more condition damage. And for Relic, you would always go with Relic of the Fractal. It's by far the best damaging option. If you don't have access to it, probably go for Cried Relic or something like that, Core Relic, but Fractal Relic is by far the best option. Now, let's talk about the consumables. The consumables for a Conduit build, very typical. You want to go with Cilantro Cured Meat Flatbreads. If you have Ascended Food, just a lot of damage that you get there. If you don't have access to it, I would go with Koi Cakes, very cheap, slightly worse, of course. Also the stats are swapped, but it doesn't matter too much. And then for utility consumables, I would go with Toxic Tunic Crystals. They are just the best in slot option. A lot of condition damage increases. Before I go to the trades, I want to mention, if you like the specific guide, be sure to leave a like. And if you want to see more guides, tier lists, and all about Guild Wars 2, be sure to subscribe. But now, let's talk about the trades. So, you play Corruption, Invocation, and Conduit, of course. In Corruption, you get a lot of multipliers. You get some nice attack when you swap legends. You get more condition damage, and you get some more condition duration increase. Then you have, of course, Torment deals more damage. That's really good. You get some more condition duration, but you also get some more condition duration applied to you. That should not be a problem in PvE, because you should have cleanses from your attacks and, of course, also from your healers. And then, of course, you take Diabolic Inferno for even more condition damage when you swap legends. Invocation is a very interesting utility-based trade line. You get some nice boons that are not that important, but if you have Fury, which you should have all the time, you get 10% more damage to power and condition. So it's really, really good for this build. And then you get some more energy when you stun break. Okay, you typically don't do that. And then you get some more power damage increase while you have more than 75% health. Okay, you get some boons that you can provide. You can swap those if you wanted to go for more passive healing and swiftness, or some more might to yourself, but typically it's not important. And then you have Charge Miss. That's the important one here. This is a really interesting one. When you swap legends while you're at or below the energy threshold, which is 10, you get, instead of 50 energy back, you get 75 energy back, which means you can spam more attacks and deal more damage. So this is really important that you always try in combat to reach 10 or lower energy before you swap legends, so that you actually get all the value from this trade. And then in Conduit, you just get a lot of damage increases. Get some more stats, especially like condition damage and expertise here, really good. And you get more boons. Okay, makes sense, but the boons are not that important. Then you get Affinity, which is the new resource that you get when you use a weapon skill. Normally it would only be when you use a legend skill, but now it's a weapon skill as well. The Affinity, you will see why that's important in a second. Because Whenever you gain affinity, you get some endurance and heal. Okay, that's a nice defensive trait. Additionally, gain energy when you reach maximum affinity. That's the important part here. So you get 15 energy when you reach 5 affinity and you want to get there faster. So that means that you get some more energy that you can spend on your attacks. That's very important for your rotation. And some passive healing and endurance, I guess that's not bad either. And then you take Mistfire. That's by far the best like in-slot thing here. Whenever you disable an enemy, you apply some conditions to them within 1 second internal cooldown, and you use another strike when you use Cosmic Wisdom, and that also dazes. So that's really, really strong, so you can actually get a lot of damage from that. Be aware though, this 1 second ICD, that you don't spam attacks that have CCs directly on top of each other within a second, so you will not proc this. So this is the only important part here. So a lot of damage increases here, and we will get to the rotation in a second, because that all revolves around getting affinity and using the attacks in the correct order to get as much damage from that as possible. Let's quickly cover the skills. You want to go, of course, for your mace and axe, which is a really nice melee weapon. The auto attack is good, applies some conditions. The 2 does some nice burning and a fire field. The 3 is some nice torment and also some blast finisher, so you can use that to blast if you need that. You have the 4 skill, which you don't use in your rotation, which is really nice because that's a mobility skill and you don't really want to use forced movement in your rotation, and you can use that if you wanted to reposition, but you don't need to. That's quite nice. And the 5 skill is a nice CC and applies some heavy damage. For your spear, you have a nice melee or ranged auto attack, depending if you are in melee or range, and it will reset your 5 skill by a little bit, by 1 second. The 5 skill is the most important one here. It applies a lot of damage and gives you some stacks to increase your damage even more. And it's a blast finisher, so always try to land it, of course. And always try to use that so that it doesn't have 3 ammunition charges left, so that your other weapon skills on spear actually recharge some value. The 4 skill is some nice CC, a pull. It's really potent and also does some nice damage. The 3 skill, of course, is on top of the defensive thing, also reducing the cooldown of the 5 skill and does some damage, so that's important. And the 2 skill is very bread and butter, easy damage and very short cooldown. For your legend skills, then you have a repositioning tool here with the Beguiling Haze. You have some stun break here. You have a very important damage attack with Hex Eater Vortex, because it also cleanses conditions and does a lot of damage, specifically when you have Malix equipped, so that's really, really strong, a lot of damage, and you have a heal, of course. The elite skill, Twin Moon Sweep, is very strong because it applies a lot of conditions, so always try to land it and try to be in melee range for it, so that you actually hit all of the sides, because it does multiple sides attacks around you and around the target, so you should try to hit it in melee range. The Cosmic Wisdom has different effects depending on legend, so if you use it in Dervish form, so in the Rasa form, you get some nice damage around you. If you use it in the Demon form, it will reduce the energy cost of the next utility skill that you use, but it has an increased cooldown, which doesn't matter for you, so you would always use that and try to align it so that you actually use that not with your elite skill, but with your Call to Anguish skill, which is your only utility skill here on Malix that you use in your rotation to deal damage. And because the flip over skill that it will get will also do some even more damage. So that's the important part. Not necessarily the pull, which is also CC, so that does some damage as well with this build, but the flip over skill. Of course, the healing skill is important. You have some wound removal here, you have a stun break here, and of course, very important, Embrace the Darkness for some passive pulsing torment around you, which is really strong, especially if you use a normal attack that is not the auto attack. You will empower this and give additional torment. So if you want to min-max, you would always use 1 auto attack between your attacks so that you actually get more torment procs out of that, because it has an internal cooldown. And then you use, of course, Release Potential Mesmer. Always when you swap into your legend, you will see that with the rotation, you always want to use that as the first and the last thing of the legend, because it will reset when you swap legends and it just gives you some nice attack. Both of those attacks are just in damage increases. That's how this build is with all of the attacks. Nothing to swap around because this is just how it goes. Revenant doesn't have any flexibility there. And now let's talk about the rotation. Let's start with the opener. In the opener, you want to start in Legendary Entity stance and use Twin Moon Sweep, so the elite skill, into Hex Eater Vortex, into Temporary Rift, and use Release Potential Dervish, Echoing Eruption, and swap to Legendary Demon stance. Instantly activate Embrace the Darkness, your elite skills, weapon swap, and use Abyssal Race into Release Potential Mesmer and Abyssal Force. And after that, you are already in your loop. After that, you want to use Abyssal Plots into Abyssal Race, then you use your auto attack between all the steps if you can, then you use Call to Anguish into Unyielding Impact, Abyssal Race into Abyssal Force, and Abyssal Blitz if you have enough energy. And then the last thing, like I mentioned, release Potential Mesmer and swap to Legendary Entity stance. In Legendary Entity stance, you want to start with Hex Eater Vortex into Release Potential Dervish and a weapon swap, Searing Fissure into Echoing Eruption, Twin Moon Sweep into Temporal Rift and Searing Fissure, Hex Eater Vortex into one auto attack chain, Twin Moon Sweep into Searing Fissure, Misery Swipe and Anguish Swipe and Release Potential Dervish, and finish up with Hex Eater Vortex into Echoing Eruption and swap to Legendary Demon stance. Be aware that the Twin Moon Sweep can be a little bit weird with the Legendary Demon stance selected, so it can be interrupted, will not change your rotation that much, but it can be a little bit weird. Of course, use the Cosmic Wisdom, you have 3 of cooldown throughout the rotation. Just be aware if you use it in the Malek stance that it will also be more value if you use it on your Call to Anguish skill instead of your Elite, so that's the important part, so delay it a bit. And of course, like I mentioned, use Charged Miss correctly so that you get under 10 energy, and then Legend Swap so that you get 75 energy instead of 50. That's the whole rotation. Very, very strong. Of course, delay your CC if you need to CC the boss, but the damage output is very, very strong, very high. It loses some damage on moving targets, and currently it reaches up to 56k DPS. So this is, at the time of this video's recording, the highest. It might get nerfed. If the damage output gets nerfed, I will put it down in the pinned comment, so be sure to check that one out. But I think the rotation and the gearing and stuff will stay the same, even if the damage numbers will be decreased in the future patches. But with that much said, shout out again to Snowcrows, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.